I don't think that's the answer. We got to get back to
I think
legal
it's,
immigration.
to me,
and the
it's
system
it's
is the
intellectually
problem.
dishonest to me. We need to do.
There are other values at stake.
I think
there are
the
other
answer-
values at stake.
I think-
Venezuelans in 2017, we had roughly 2,600 encounters. And then fast forward to 2023, we had 334,000 encounters.
You estimated the net cost to U.S. taxpayers to be $150 billion to support these illegals after deducting what little tax they pay. That includes $70 billion in costs to our schools, does it not?
Yes, sir.
And $22 billion for medical care?
Yes, sir.
Of those thousands of cases, we have about 50 county residents being prosecuted. The remaining is the result of an open border.
I want to ask you, what if we had a mass deportation, or if we were to stop immigration in the United States, so-called illegal?
How many should we let come to America?
The federal government spent over $66 billion on illegal immigrants in 2023.
When you don't enforce a law, people don't tend to follow it.
Especially, and more so than the financial cost, all of the folks on the terrorist watch list, all of the drugs, all of the crime and criminals. We're not vetting this. It's pouring into our communities, and it's devastating. We need freedom, but we need rule of law alongside of it, or we lose the peace and tranquility we promise in the Constitution.
Well, we can have both,
order.
right? We can have both. We don't have to choose between security and a legal immigration system that works. We don't have to choose.
You're right.
They're compatible. In fact, they complement each other.
Yet
If we
they
have
do.
a legal immigration system that works, then there's going to be fewer people crossing, so Border Patrol's freed
Do
up
you
to
think the
interdict
president?
people.
Do you think the president is doing everything he can to create order and law and at the border? And do you think he's doing everything within his power to make sure we have seamlessness at the border with respect to immigration? Do you think he's doing everything he can?
I mean, all I can say is he's deported a lot of people, far more people. Even as a percentage of the people who arrived, he deported more in his first 2 years than the other administration did in its last 2 years.
Let me move on.
It's deported a lot of people. I don't think that's the answer. We got to get back to
I think
legal
it's
immigration.
to me
and the
it's
system is the
intellectually
problem.
dishonest to me to sidestep a very simple question. Is this president doing everything he can with the tools that he has, recognizing there are things that we need to do?
There are other values at stake.
I think
there are
the
other
answer-
values at stake.
I
He
think
could
the
separate
answer is
children
no.
like the last administration did. Yes, he could do that. He shouldn't do that. There
Mr.
are
Smith,
lines
Mr.
that you
Smith,
should
the
restrict.
deluge of crime coming across the border. Well, you know what, Mr. Blair, you were a Border Patrol officer. Is this just a natural ebb and flow, like my ranking member suggested, just a surge, a seasonal surge? Or is it?
Just to clarify, since quoting me, I didn't say seasonal surge. I mean, this is obviously beyond a season. I mean, we have a unique problem, 3 countries that have tremendous problems, the triangle countries in Central America, that are causing a large part of this. But what I did say is this started a couple decades ago. This has not just started the last couple of years.
Okay, let me take off then on that, and I don't want to mischaracterize you. Is this something that's been going on for, when I say this, and this is my last question, what we're experiencing now with the record flow of migrants, the record flow of drugs, record migrant deaths, record people on terrorist watches, is that something that's been going on, as the ranking member suggests, for a decade or so, or is this a recent phenomenon as a result of this administration's either policies, lack of leadership, et cetera, willful or not? Is this a longer tail, or is this something as a consequence of the current administration's policies?
Sure, to give you an example, let's look at the Venezuelan issue. So Venezuelans in 2017, we had roughly 2,600 encounters. And then fast forward to 2023, we had 334,000 encounters. Now you look at that, about 8 million people have fled Venezuela because of Hugo Chavez before, and then also Maduro, right? And so at first they were starting to go to South American countries, but it wasn't until the current administration's policies and procedures that allowed this to actually happen, and that invited all the foreign nationals from South America, regardless of what country of origin, to our southern border. So you can see the numbers or the data right there to show that this is not a natural occurrence. This is all by design, and it's all been done through policies through this administration.
And we got tremendously good news because of this economy performing much better than was projected a year ago or a couple of years ago. The lifetime of the trust funds for Social Security and Medicare have been pushed out. That is good news that we all should cheer. I was wondering, given this is a hearing on immigration, what impact does immigration and immigrants have on Social Security and Medicare trust funds?
Well, the Social Security Trust Fund report directly says it. It's a result of increased labor force, and the increased labor force results in more tax revenue to Social Security. The report says that basically increasing from 829,000 to 1.7 million immigrants per year reduces the annual burden of Social Security by 1.5% of taxable payroll over by 2097, which is about $137 billion in today's terms.
So working Americans see their wages stagnate as a result, and many are forced out of the labor market entirely. Ms. Kirchner, how do we help working Americans by flooding the labor market with cheap, illegal labor?
We don't help them at all. And actually, if we wanted to be kind to their previous generations of immigrants, we would not flood the market with cheap labor. There is ample evidence that it depresses wages.
And the CBO director actually confirmed that right here before this committee. You estimated the net cost to U.S. taxpayers to be $150 billion to support these illegals after deducting what little tax they pay. That includes $70 billion in costs to our schools, does it not?
Yes, sir.
And $22 billion for medical care?
Yes, sir.
What do you think the Democrats would say if Republicans proposed cutting $70 billion out of our schools and $22 billion out of our hospitals? And yet, isn't that exactly what they're doing?
Well, I wouldn't propose to put words in anyone's mouth, but I do think that illegal immigration has consequences, and we need to accept that as a nation, and we need to make good policy decisions, and that means understanding the real impact of what's going on and the costs that are associated, not just the economic benefits, as you said, of growing the greater economic pie, the GDP measuring alone, and
by the way,
everything is made up of choices. And if you look,
and your estimate of cost is just direct costs of the government. It's not the cost of crimes committed by illegals.
Exactly.
It's not the cost of wage reductions for working Americans.
Exactly.
It's strictly
it's a
the direct
snapshot
cost.
of payments and revenues.
The Democrats tell us that illegal immigrants are more law-abiding than Americans. Mr. Smith, are the illegals entering your county more law-abiding than your legal residents?
Well, I can tell you from the numbers that I quoted earlier, of those thousands of cases, we have about 50 county residents being prosecuted. The remaining is the result of an open border.
I want to ask you, what if we had a mass deportation, or if we were to stop immigration in the United States, which some recommend, especially so-called illegal, undocumented people, what would happen to our economy?
Well, it would be a massive contraction in our economy. We would lose, over the next decade, about 1% of our GDP would go away from just mass deportation of the long-time illegal immigrant residents, not even talking about the ones who've come recently who are applying for asylum. So massive contraction in the economy, huge blow to employers, a huge exodus of foreign direct investment into our economy, because people aren't going to invest in an economy that has a shrinking workforce. If you don't have workers here, you're not going to be able to build factories here. You're not going to be able to have farms here. And so you're going to see investment go offshore. You're going to see jobs go offshore.
Either parole or what we'll refer to as illegally are immediately eligible for. And what you think that does to the cross-section of people who are currently coming here?
Well, sir, those who come here legal, it depends how they're released. And this is one of the ways the Biden administration has significantly exacerbated the problem. So if you are released through parole, parole is given a status under our benefits programs much like that of a legal permanent resident. And we know that there are millions of parolees. We don't know the exact amount. I'm waiting for the latest report to come out. But we know that there are millions of parolees. And because they are considered lawfully present, even though they have no legal status, they are immediately eligible for work permits. They're eligible for Social Security numbers. They're eligible for Obamacare. And that also, the Social Security number opens up the box to tax benefits, earned income tax credit, and the additional child tax credit. But where we're really going to see the cost, these parolees, because they're treated like legal permanent residents, some of them immediately get benefits. The Cubans and Haitians, as I said, are immediately eligible for everything. But the chickens will come home to roost in about 5 years when all of these other parolees who are not Cubans and Haitians are going to be eligible for everything. And so we need to be aware that without adding one illegal alien crossing the border, the costs are going to go up.
What percentage, in your opinion, estimation, your research, what percentage or what number of the world's non-U.S. population would come to America if they could? So in other words, we got roughly 350 million Americans, some 7 billion plus people who don't live in the United States. So if they could, what percentage of the world's population, or what number, would you just kind of a guesstimate based on, would come here if they could?
Yes, sir. Fortunately, I didn't know it would be a pop quiz, but I know Gallup
You didn't know there'd be
has done-
math in this.
No, I didn't. I do know Gallup has done some surveys, and I know I think it's probably a third.
So you're saying somewhere in the 2 billion range. I'm just assigning a number to a third, maybe 2 to 3 billion, something like that.
You know, that would be my guess. You couldn't
About
hold
a
me
third.
to it.
Okay, Mr. Blair, if you had to guesstimate a number, if they could, the world's population that would come to the United States if they could.
Well, the U.S. is the greatest country in the world, so I would probably put it maybe 50% or more.
Okay, you're saying 3-4 billion. Mr. Smith,
I'd make it a close 70%.
close to 70%. So you're saying in the 5 billion type range, and then down at the end, Mr. Bier.
Well, it'd certainly be over 100 billion, but we can focus on the people who
Over
have already
100
gotten the
billion.
process.
We don't have 100 billion. You meant 100
Sorry,
billion.
100 million.
You're saying
Wow.
only 100 million. You think
We could, yeah.
you're saying only 100 million.
Well, that's about what Gallup.
Only
Gallup
100 million.
estimates. Yeah.
What's the population of Africa? What's the population of South America? What's the population of Asia? And you think only
Yeah, I
100
mean,
million of them. There's what, 5 billion between those, just roughly making it up? So you're saying in the range of 2% would come here? 2% would come here if they could?
I mean, wages equalize over time. So look at what we have
Okay,
open borders
thank
with
you,
Puerto
thank you.
Rico.
I think
We
you
have
know where
Puerto
I'm going. Thank you, I reclaim my time, thank you.
Okay.
All right, so how many should we let come to America? I think that's a fundamental question. How many should we let come to America? Meaning legal, illegal, some want to mix the two together, which is offensive. I wish Mr. Glencott was still here. How many should we let come?
Yes, sir.
What would be a good number?
We believe that current immigration rates are about as much as we can sustain as a nation. We would, however, advocate that those immigrants be skilled. We think for the national interest, it would benefit. both our
Respectfully, I'm going to apologize because I've only got 2 minutes and
Yes,
I'm going
sir.
somewhere. I apologize, Mr. Kirchner, for that.
fine.
I think the question, okay, what percentage would come if they could? How many should we let come? And what number would make us no longer America? And is it worth preserving what makes us distinctly, uniquely America? Is that worth preserving? The fundamental question relative to the illegal alien invasion, or for those who support the illegal alien invasion, first of all, as others have said, there's no such thing as illegal immigration. Immigration is a legal, lawful process. For that matter, legal immigrants are Americans, aren't they? Legal immigrants are Americans, of course. They wanted to be Americans. They earned their citizenship. They pledged their allegiance. They learned our language. At least everyone that I have interacted with at the naturalization ceremonies they have the privilege of going to has learned our language. They've had the means and the ability to contribute to our economy and our society to make us stronger, make us better. In fact, this Friday, 2 days from now, I look forward to welcoming another group among the million or so that we legally allow into this country every year, legally. I'm going to welcome them at Patrick Henry's Red Hill home in my district. I have the most historic district in the country, I would submit. So the fundamental question for those who support the illegal alien invasion is, does everyone around the world have the right to come to America? Or does America have the right to decide who gets to come to America? How about that? Those two questions. Does everyone around the world have the right to come to America, or does America get to decide who has the right to be in America? Ms. Kirchner.
Americans should be able to decide the future of their country.
Blair.
Thank you, sir.
Americans should decide.
Mr. Smith.
Same.
Mr. Bier.
America should decide, but there should be a
Yes,
presumption
thank
in
you very
favor
much.
of liberty.
And that's the question that it does indeed make us very far apart from what Lloyd said. Because what many on the other side believe, and I would submit Mr. Bier believes this if he was being honest with us, that they believe that, because of the statements that he said in his opening remarks, they believe they have the right to be here.
In your written testimony submitted to the committee, you note that the level of illegal mass immigration, U.S. is currently, the level is currently seeing is a deliberate, this is quote, a deliberate and calculated strategy of weaponizing migration to undermine the sovereignty and security of the United States and its states. Could you elaborate just a little bit? Don't take a whole lot, but just give me a couple of, elaborate on that a little bit.
Yes, sir. If you look at the great work done by Kelly Greenhill and also Joseph Humeyer from the Heritage Foundation, they've done a lot of case studies in regards to this. Weaponized mass migration has happened over 80 times since the 1951 Refugee Convention. It's when a state or a non-state actor uses human beings as a weapon to eradicate someone's sovereignty. So in my report, I stated Lukashenko was doing that against the countries of Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, where he forced foreign nationals to other people's borders in order to decrease the security of the environment so that they could decrease the sovereignty of that nation. By following that same playbook, the current administration is inviting massive amounts of foreign nationals to our southern border in order to decrease or eradicate our sovereignty, force Border Patrol agents, like what I was doing, and other law enforcement agencies and also local law enforcement to address that that mass migration, which decreases the security of the environment and allows the Mexican cartels to completely operationally control both sides.
The federal government spent over $66 billion on illegal immigrants in 2023, according to the Federation for American Immigration. Does anyone here want to guess how much we've spent on homeless veterans in 23? Guess? High? Well, let's just start. Higher, lower, the same? Anybody want to guess?
Fractional.
Fractional. Thank you. 3 billion. 66 on illegals, 3 billion on people who have laid down their lives for this country. Can anyone explain up there why that makes sense?
Well, one is including all sorts of benefits, and one is just looking at a very, very narrow slice.
No, I'm using the same
So if you
numbers.
look
I'm,
at-
sir,
if
sir,
if
you are.
did a
I am
direct
using
comparison,
apples
it
to
would be a very
apples.
different
I'm using apples to
calculation.
apples. So since you know, why don't you share with me?
We don't
Oh,
track
you
U.S.
don't know.
We don't check
You don't
track
know.
U.S.
Okay.
veterans in the census, so that would be very helpful if we did. And then I would be
Yeah,
able to
we
give you
did.
a
But
very
do you know
good-
the answer? Because
good-
I do. I do. So I appreciate your opinion of which you have no facts on. But let me continue and let me educate you some more. The federal government, breaking that $66 billion down, let's look at what we fund. So you might want to get a pencil and paper and take some notes because I'll help you do your job. $5.8 billion in SNAP, $10 billion in Medicare, $8.2 billion in uncompensated hospital expenditures, $3 billion for primary and secondary education for illegal immigrants, And how many illegal immigrants are given taxpayer-funded housing compared to the number of homeless veterans that are sleeping on the street? You don't know because you don't want to know. You don't want to see the numbers. Well, I do, And I can share with you the American people do. Because I'll share with you, the people in my district, in Michigan, of the 9th District, we care about our homeless veterans. We care about our veterans. And yes, we care about them a little bit more than we care about people who have broken the law to get here illegally.
Do you think there are effective ways for DHS agents to work with the intelligence community on tracking cartel whereabouts in border towns, intercepting plans, and disrupting operations? Can you just speak to that and maybe the current state between DHS and the intelligence community and what we need to be doing better?
Yeah, first and foremost, they need to be designated as foreign terrorist organizations in order to get the intelligence apparatus to completely understand what Mexican cartels are actually doing. Also, you also need to change the Uniform Crime Report or the National Incident-Based Reporting System. As it stands right now, a lot of cartel-related activity is actually not put into that system. So we're actually running blind right now.
Mr. Bier, I said to you earlier, I was very pleased to meet you this morning because I have been following your writing for some time. And there are so many things that you've written that absolutely resonate and make sense for me, given our situation in Vermont with our workforce crisis. And so you said, America has never needed immigration like it does now. I would agree based on what I see in across industries in Vermont. You've also said that without immigration, the US population will decline. By the 2030s, we have labor force decline. The jobs that are going unfilled are not going to be filled without immigrants. Just numbers don't work out.
Can you share how the Biden administration's policies worsened under this border crisis?
Sure, as a Border Patrol agent and an officer on the Operation Lone Star, by inviting so many people to the southern border that he has, it forces or coerces every single agency along the border to deal with that mass migration. And so because of that, the rest of the border is left wide open for other nefarious activities, such as the Mexican cartels, such as Tren de Aragua coming up from Venezuela. All the other criminal activities are now happening between the ports of entry because of that. The record amount of fentanyl coming through, you name it.
And how has your community changed as a result of President Biden's open border policies?
We no longer have a southern or sovereign border. Our residents have to live in fear of hearing helicopters during the day, getting their kids in at night. A lot of outside activities are very limited now. We've transformed our entire lives to live with a security threat.
What we are giving them in terms of Social Security numbers and the benefits. So if you can, speak to that.
Yes, sir. The parolees that are let in, they are...
$30,000 a month.
Yes.
That's what our
And-
average is. That's
and they're more at the
$350,000 a
border.
year.
Those are the ones flown in, and there are more that are being
Those that are
pulled in
flown
at the
in.
border. They are treated, for the purpose of federal benefits programs, they are treated like legal permanent residents. So for most people, that's green card holders. And that means that on day one, they get work permits. Well, they have to apply, but they get work permits. They're eligible for Social Security numbers. They're eligible for Obamacare. And with the
I
social...
filed a bill on that, by the way. To
I'm
stop
sorry?
that. I've joined a colleague in the Senate to file a bill to stop that
Oh,
madness
well,
on
thank you, sir.
them being eligible for Obamacare. Keep going.
And they're eligible for tax credits. I mean, we will give them back money when they file a
Refundable tax credits
Yes,
without tax
exactly.
liability.
Exactly. So when they do pay taxes, they will get it'll be a net gain for the migrant. So in 5 years, although in 5 years, all of those parolees will be eligible for everything under the sun: Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, TANF, food stamps, Social Security income, federal student aid.
How has the restriction of legal pathways significantly increased reliance on asylum?
Well, look, I mentioned 3% of the people who are going through the green card process get a green card each year. So that right there tells you we're about 97% closed. People don't look at this as an option. People are going to die in these backlogs before they get green cards. And so, yeah, they look at it and they say, there's no way. This is not an option for me. And so they come to the border and they tell us that that's why they're coming. There's no visa category available to the people who are showing up at our southwest border.
Can both of you touch on the cost that illegal drug flow from the southern border continues to place on our local law enforcement and communities?
Unfortunately, Because we're dealing with mass amounts of illegal immigration at the southern border, most of our assets, to include resources, are now geared towards that. So a lot of the apprehensions, unfortunately, when it comes to narcotics and everything else, is happening with the Texas DPS or local law enforcement. Maybe that's on Operation Stone Garden or whatnot. So unfortunately, the local law enforcement is now having to deal with Mexican cartels or foreign terrorist organizations, while the federal government is facilitating the invasion.
You know, the resources in Kinney County and other counties along the border are beyond stretched thin. They've been broken. Our EMS is broken. We have a volunteer fire department. It's broken. Counties are broken. Communities are broken. People's lives are being devastated. Y'all deal with taxpayer funding dollars, which are some people here want to legislate not for their benefit. The taxpayers are the ones that fund this building, that pay for these tax dollars. Legislation should be implemented toward them. And I think this border crisis really simplifies down to a simple issue. When you don't enforce a law, people don't tend to follow it.
I just want to make sure the record is very clear. Kinney County, you have gone from prior to the Biden administration. I've heard all of this testimony here today saying, or questions from my colleagues saying, oh, nothing's different. There's, everything's all just perfectly fine under Biden. We've heard testimony that says, oh, they're doing more, removals. And just speak to the actual on the ground. Kinney County, Texas, not some ivory tower sitting in Washington, D.C., where you put out papers and sit in think tanks and talk about how, wonderful things would be in theory. In Kinney County, Texas, did you go from 140 crimes, roughly, prior to the Biden administration to now something like 6,700 crimes last year?
Absolutely. That's going to be criminal trespass, evading arrest on foot, human trafficking, human smuggling, criminal mischief. And to speak on the Senate bill, I deal with Republicans and Democrats on the border. The only Democrats I've heard from that support that are here in Washington, D.C. The Democrats on the border don't support the Senate bill, but the ones here do.
How has the current border policies contributed to the rise in fentanyl trafficking and drug trafficking as a whole?
Well, sir, the Biden administration has focused very heavily on releasing illegal migrants, and that has driven this mass wave of immigration through Central America, through Mexico. But what's coming with it? I mean, all of these people are paying cartels, and they're all paying cartels, and their cartels are becoming richer and richer. And we know that the cartels use human beings to divert resources so that they can bring in their shipments in other areas of the border. So it's interesting you asked that question, because when I first started working in immigration over 20 years ago, I had border agents tell me, no, the two are separate. Smuggling aliens is different than drug trafficking, and they were very different. And now it is all combined. It's one big, lucrative, illegal, toxic operation, and we are paying the price as Americans.
Right.
God bless you all. God bless our great country. We are adjourned.